The Face Takers by Short Skirts and Explosions, read by Deathlight. The Skittering Things.
That's enough gabbing for tonight, girls. You've got a busy day ahead of y'all. Everybody will want to get a good night's rest if you're fixing to sell some pictures of lemonade at Ponyville Market tomorrow.
Applejack stood up, smiling towards the center of the small, wooden clubhouse. Her voice echoed tightly against the rickety walls of the place, finding the ambient noises of the night settling around the building.
If y'all need anything, just wake up Apple Bloom. She knows how to get to the house from here. Still, before I skedaddle on home and leave you three to slumber the night away, I reckon y'all deserve a bang-up tale,
Applejack slid the window shut to the starry night outside. The sound of the crickets gave cadence to her hoofsteps as she trotted over the elevated shack's groaning floorboards.
I'm no Rainbow Dash, but I reckon I know something that'll give you the goosebumps mighty fierce.
She winked as her blonde head drifted past a lone, dangling lamp. The tiny torch stretched her shadows into thin stalks as she approached the window towards the far end.
Let's see, how to begin? Oh yes. On a cold autumn night, just like this one, a group of little ponies went hiking into the woods. There's a full moon out that evening, just like the one hanging over our heads at this very moment. And the kids thought they were going to find the way to the campsite just fine and dandy. Only, they didn't take into account just how thick the tree branches got the further they trotted into the woods. As sooner did they realize it, they couldn't see their own hooves in front of their faces.
Applejack lowered the second window, however, just a crack. This caused the autumn wind to blow in tightly, producing a shrill whistle as it kicked at Applejack's blonde bangs.
But they didn't get scared. Oh no, they should've, but they didn't. The darkness was just a backset, they thought. They could just bed down right where they were, and wait until the light of morning. So, lying there in their pillows and sleeping bags, they decided to do just that. Little did the silly ponies know what they were in store for.
Applejack slithered forward, her golden grin turning into a crispy brown from the amber haze of the one dangling lamp.
Sometime in the middle of the night, a pony screamed. The youngest hiker in the group woke up, and for some reason he couldn't explain, he was frozen stiff with fright. A pale glow had fallen over the ground, but it didn't make no sense. Shouldn't have the trees blocked out the moonlight? It was then he realized that something unnatural was going on. He tried to warn his buddies, but he couldn't move. He cried out their names, but all he could hear in response were little yells, shredding in different directions, growing more and more distant towards the north heart of the woods.
Dark lines formed along the mare's face as she glanced left and right before the lantern, then putting on the campiest scowl she could muster.
At last, he could move. He wasn't sure if it was his heart leaping through into his throat or pure adrenaline. The little colt jumped to his hooves. Right then, the light around him disappeared, and he could have sworn he heard things. Quiet, silent, hungry, skittering things. All the rustling through the earth like a sea of snakes beneath the forest leaves. There was still no sign of his hiking buddies, so he decided to run back to town and ask for help. It was dreadfully cold that night, so he fumbled through his friend's sleeping bags until he found a long, woolly coat. He put the jacket on and galloped as fast as his hoofs could carry him to civilization.
A shrill wind blew through the clubhouse, carrying cricket song into the hollow of the shack as Applejack's tongue clicked and clicked.
He came along the log cabin, breathless. He knocked and knocked on the door, begging, screaming for some pony, any pony to wake up and help him. Not long after, the front door opened, and the ponies that lived there came out with a lantern. At first sight of him, they gasped, their faces pale with fright. He wasted no time telling them about his friends, about the skittering things in the dark that took them far, far away. The ponies barely listened to the fella. They were too gripped with shock to breathe. At last, the stone of the household set the pony down and ran to town. The colt waited, shivering in the corner of the cabin's living room, clutching the jacket to himself. When the stallion came back, he had 3 police officers with him, and they forced the colt to crash low to the ground. The child was scared, confused, and he was begging to know what he did wrong.
Applejack raised her hoof and twisted the knob of the dangling lantern.
What he saw drove the poor little scamp mad, for it was then they shone the light on his figure. and he realized he wasn't wearing a jacket at all, but he was wearing his buddy's skins, and they're all patched together like a quilt, with each pale color like a different fool's coat, all except his own color. They took the colt to an asylum the very next day, for he'd been reduced to a babbling fool. The rumor is he's still wasting away to this very day. No pony's ever found what happened to the bodies of his best friends. But some ponies say, even after all these years, that when they trot along the edge of those woods, and the moon is shining bright on the dark leaves, they hear screams like distant whispers from the deepest rifts of the trees, and the words they shout are the very same words that the poor fellow whispers and murmurs each day in his long padded cell.
Applejack turned off the lamp, casting the clubhouse in the shadows. Pale beams danced through the window panels as she murmured against the nothingness.
They came and took their faces, and then they took their insides. And one day, when the moon itself is fuller than it's ever been before, they'll crawl into our homes and give them all back.
Apple Bloom was being serenaded by an endless chorus of crickets by the time her consciousness returned. She wasn't entirely sure on how many hours had passed, or if any hours had dipped by at all. All she knew was that her eyes had slowly reopened over an indeterminate amount of time, like twin yellow tulips blooming against the cold kiss of midnight. The memories of that evening oozed through her mind like a trickle of molasses between her ears. She recalled getting together with Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo right after school. She remembered the plans they had made to make lemonade and earn the juice sell pony cutie marks the following day. She recalled the trip to the fresh market where they bought the bags of lemons and stored them in the back of Scootaloo's wagon. They remembered the long trip to the farm and how tired they were, and how ecstatically her heart jumped when not only did she think of a sleepover on the spot, but Applejack greenlighted it. Then, just as swiftly, Apple Bloom's heart took a massive dip. She scowled into the dull haze of the shadowed clubhouse, bitterly remembering the grim story Applejack had told just seconds before leaving the three fillies to sleep alone in the shack. It wasn't that Apple Bloom was remotely scared of the tale. She was simply dumbstruck by the audacity of her older sister's timing. If Rainbow Dash or Pinkie Pie had spun the yarn, she wouldn't have batted an eye, but her older sister? Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo continued to be dead silent. Neither of them had said a single thing since Applejack put the lamp out and departed. Apple Bloom was too busy fighting embarrassment to properly comprehend how frightened her friends may or may not have been by such an inside-out attempt at a bedtime story. Groaning, Apple Bloom tried to turn over, or at least she tried to turn over. Her legs lay limp beneath the plush folds of the sleeping bag. Her whole body felt like a slab of meat, and the only place she sensed her own pulse was the inner edges of her elbows, as if everything else between there and her brain had been reduced to dense wood. It was just her luck, she imagined, to have fallen asleep for less than a few hours, and already be suffering from legs that had fallen asleep. So, with a stifled grunt, Apple Bloom flung her weight to the far side, hoping that the blood would return to her extremities. A whole lot of nothing happened, and this made her heart skip another beat. She blinked, and in that blink she got the distinct feeling that the only things following her anti-commands were her eyelids. It was then that she realized she was squinting. It was bright outside the window, abnormally bright, as if the moon had drifted millions of miles closer and was nuzzling the surface of the world with its hungry, pale cheeks. She could see every bend, every fold, every flutter of leaves directly outside the window. The crack in the pane whistled fiercely, as if it was directly funneled by the sea of crickets huddled up and hidden beyond. But then, they weren't alone. Something was singing along with them, something frail and emaciated and ghostly. rising and falling in whispering pitch. Ugh. When Apple Bloom tried speaking, it was like vomiting marbles out of her mouth. Her tongue was suddenly a fat, foreign worm, and she wrestled with it to produce the next grumbling breath. Sweetie! Sweet Belle! 2 spaces away from her, the shadow of the filly stirred. More and more whispers lifted towards the ceiling, choking on the moonlit sobs against the dust. Sweetie Belle! Wake up! Apple Bloom spoke to the pale wall. Before her slanted eyes, it grew paler, and her vision fogged as she realized she couldn't move any more than she could speak. Sweetie Belle! She blinked, and the full shape slumped, shuffling across from her and Sweetie Belle even more. Sweetie Belle! Can't move! She would have been hyperventilating if only the weight of the universe wasn't pressing into her numb ribcage. So cold. A vaporous chill fell throughout the shack, stiffening the air like frozen ice at the end of Apple Bloom's nostrils. In spite of her paralysis, she felt the tiniest of twitches in her ear, for there was a shift in pitch, something beyond Sweetie Belle, but very much in that very room. Shifting closer, clicking and clicking. It took 2 more beats of her heart, and Apple Bloom's ears quivered. But she soon realized, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that something monumental had changed. The cricket sounds were no longer outside. The window rattled, shifting down an inch within a space of a blink. The movement was so sharp, so sudden, that Apple Bloom didn't see the body rising until 2 seconds into it. Her eyes darted, pulsing with each heartbeat. Sweetie Belle? The unicorn's horn glistened in the moonlight. She was sobbing, she was moving, she was awake. Sweetie Belle, please. Apple Bloom gulped. Don't cry. Don't cry. I need help. Something isn't right. Her breath left her. Sweetie Belle's cries didn't stop, and neither did her horn. It tilted around, and her shattered face along with it. Then there was a point where the unicorn's neck stopped, but her face didn't. At last, she tilted towards her friend, and Apple Bloom could see straight through her mouth and twin nostrils to the bone-pale moonlight behind. The lips became the black silver, opening and closing like a black heart valve, and when the moonlight reappeared behind her muzzle, the sobs continued, calling for Rarity, calling for Mommy, drilling out indecipherable songs in between, like the wails of a drowning foal deep underwater. Apple Bloom gazed as the living mask floated forward, then twirled sharply like a windsock tangled up with the ether. The moonlight swam suddenly across several needle-thin lines. Apple Bloom could see that Sweetie's face was suspended on gossamer strands, and before she could find where they were suspended from, several spindly things crawled down, rattling against each other like living brambles. There were clicks and more clicks, and something eggshell-shaped swung through the shadows, slicing the air beneath the sobbing muzzle. The mask swung free, the voice warbling along with it, and Sweetie Belle's body slumped to the ground far below. The floorboard shook, rocking upwards towards Apple Bloom's end of the shack. The resulting jolt was intense enough to punch her shoulders through the sleeping bag, and the filly's numb body rolled until she was facing the blackened black ceiling above. Here, with her lungs fully stretched, Apple Bloom welcomed hyperventilation like a long-lost friend. Flowing tears glistened her peripheral vision, magnifying the moon's glow on either side of her like kaleidoscopic bone light. Sweetie Belle's sobs became muffled mules, Something clicked in the corners of the shack. Something scurried. A soft cries loomed beyond measure, as if the ceiling had grown in 100 feet within 2 breaths, carrying Sweetie's mask into the onyx field beyond. Soon, the foreground was consumed by Apple Bloom's panting, wheezing breaths. She knew that she stood out like a cacophonous siren. She simply didn't know what was listening. It was then that Apple Bloom saw the silver strands. They roped down from the ever-black, dancing and glistening in the moonlight until they straightened like tungsten puppet strings. As soon as they appeared, something blotted them out. Something small with jagged limbs and more limbs. The first thing she saw in the window light were its hooks, all curled inwards from the bending column of legs. It stopped, swinging above her, hovering like a winged grasshopper. Her nostrils flared a few inches beneath it, and all she smelled was rust. The clicks intensified. It lowered, shimming down the silver string towards her. Her mouth hung open in a numb lurch, and as her eyes focused on its bobbing body, she realized that she could easily swallow the thing in a single gasp, and that's what caused her to whimper all the more. It heard her. It had always heard her. From the darkness, from the endless corners of dust, from every grimy place she had ever passed by in her blissful, foolish bounce, it had studied her. And now it had made contact, one grasshopper leg after another, landing like a soft dove against the rim of her mouth. There was tonality to its clicks, but Apple Bloom didn't realize this until it bent forward. Staring directly between her eyes was its alabaster skull face. Deep within its slitted black hollow of its breathing cavity, a pair of red dots flickered, narrowed, and flickered again. It bit down further to study her. 2 cloven claws clung to the string above, while 4 more shuffled across her chin and lips. A tear rolled down her cheek, and it bulbously reflected the bristled, undulating belly of the dangling thing. As the creature clicked again, Apple Bloom's left ear flicked. Fluid pumped hotly through her face muscles, so that each square inch of her muzzle twitched beneath the thing's scurrying pincers. Blood was returning to her upper body. She knew this. It must have known as well. With a savage crackle of cricket song, the thing leaned up, gripping tighter to the gossamer strings, as it stood on the tips of 2 claws across the bridge of Apple Bloom's nose. The foal's twitching eyes watched helplessly as it reached across its hairy thorax, digging a grasshopper leg through a round pouch hanging off a leathery belt, filled to the brim with microscopic tools. After rummaging through the tiny satchel, it pulled a round, curved object out into the moonlight. Apple Bloom exhaled at the sight of the severed scorpion's tail, with a long metal needle affixed savagely to the pointed end. The creature clicked, and several snapping sounds answered it from the abysmal edges of the clubhouse. It twirled like a circus performer, dangled on the edge of the strings, and lowered its upper body until it hung mere centimeters above Apple Bloom's brow. She could count the barbs on its cobbled legs as it descended within a hair's distance, dangling a pair of cloven claws against her coat. The thing tickled the flesh of her eyelids, then grabbed onto a cluster of eyelashes. It tugged hard, sending knifing pains into Apple Bloom's skull as it pulled her eyelids back, exposing the pink muscle between her cornea and her socket. Then, with a prolonged purring noise from deep within the nasal hollow, The red-eyed cretin pivoted the scorpion's stinger and lowered the needle towards the soft, mucousy membrane at the very edge of Applebloom's vision. The last thing she could make out was the glistening tip of the metal prong as it inched towards her sight. Her eyes rolled back on instinct. She screamed, but all that came out of her numb throat was a deep, hollow exhale.
Yeah!
The creature froze. Applebloom gasped. She lay there, mute, unmoving.
Yeah! Ah!
The creature hoisted itself up and pivoted to look towards the far end of the shack. Applebloom's eyes jerked towards the same direction. Skidaloo's shadow was shaking, shifting, writhing. The cries had been coming from her tiny throat. The petite Pegasus shot up in her sleeping bag, clawing at her face and muzzle, desperately pulling at the living web of hair and grasshopper legs, all clambering over her in the moonlight. With the sound of rattling pebbles, the thing dangling above Applebloom shrieked, and it sounded demonically linguistic. With a hissing snarl, it shimmied its way up the string, rocked back and forth, then propelled itself like a bristled tree frog through the pale shine. It landed on Skidaloo's chin, upon which it savagely thrust the scorpion needle smack dab in the nape of her neck. Skidaloo's cries pattered down to loathsome squeaks, and her body deflated to the dusty floorboards. She twitched a few times, producing glistening tears. The tiny light was soon blocked out by cobbled wings shuffling all over her, covering Skidaloo's body like ants over a mound of jelly. The writhing things clicked to one another, sounding more and more like infant laughter and fast forward. Applebloom watched as several hooked claws motioned toward the ceiling, and several more bristled bodies slithered down, carrying pale shards. The tools resembled the dismembered talons of the slain falcons, and each creature took their positions on all sides of Skidaloo's skull, their red eyes flickering in sequence with one another. By this time, Applebloom could hear her own sobs, and that's how she realized a modicum of strength had returned to her throat. She could feel blood rushing through her arteries, clean blood, warm blood, blood that was currently untainted by other unworldly venom. As the skin and flesh along her extremities tingled, she woke up to a deep, frigid terror washing over every organ. She had to get out of the clubhouse. She had to get out of there before what was happening to Skidaloo happened to her next. And it took place swifter than lightning. A hellish operation under brambles and shadow. The moonlight outside the window grew brighter, as if consuming the ritual of the moment, pulsating with each tearing sound that the talons made under the administration of the clicks, claws, and cackles. Applebloom rediscovered her legs and then went into action, squirming and shuffling and pulling her out of the sleeping bag, across the floorboards, and towards the door of the clubhouse that she knew stood behind her. She crawled backwards, shuffling and sobbing. Her eyes locked upon Skidaloo as the Pegasus' body rose, and fell back. But the face did not fall. It lifted up, being pulled like a puppet's mask towards the ceiling. And as it rose like a meaty orange lid into the moonlight, the mouth that once belonged to Skidaloo opened wide, hauling into the copious juice of the moment. No, please. Luna, wake me up. Luna! I want to wake up. I want to wake up. Luna! Skittering things jumped and danced one string to another. clicking victoriously as they kicked the filly's face and made it dance like a bloody pendulum in the moonlight.
Rah, Rainbow Dash! Rainbow Dash!
Below, a carpet of bristled shapes and grasshopper legs climbed over Scootaloo's slumped body. A pair of the creatures clasped the ends of the leftover face meat with sharp claws. Then, one after another, following each other like a train of drivers with scalpels, a dozen shadows drove into her throat and burrowed their way to her thrashing torso. It was right at this time that Apple Bloom finally shuffled past the doorframe. She fell back, tumbled, and plummeted clear off the edge of the clubhouse's balcony. There was a flash of moonlight, accompanied by the muffled salvo of a dozen sobbing voices in the distance. And then, the woods imploded with silence all around her, following the filly into the blissful black of unconsciousness.
Ah!
Apple Bloom woke up with a shriek.
Scootaloo! Sweetie Belle!
Her voice echoed over the waving grass in the evening wind. The moon was a dim blue speck high above the clubhouse roof. All the crickets were silent. Sweating, Apple Bloom stood up. An untold amount of time had passed, and all feeling had returned to her limbs. She felt her shaking hooves, sensed every stagnant goosebump. A column of bile shot up her throat, accompanying a tight bubble of stark, horrifying memories that expanded explosively inside her throbbing head. She flashed one look at the clubhouse. She imagined the glowing silhouettes of Sweetie Belle's mouth and nostrils in some alien moonlight. She heard the muffled cries of Scootaloo as 100 grasshopper legs crawled and sliced and carved at her face. Stifling a sob, Apple Bloom shivered, spun about, and galloped straight through the orchards. She bolted through trees, bounding over mounds of dirt and soil, sprinting swiftly as if to outrun even the sounds of her own panting breaths. She murmured one name, and one name alone. By the time the Apple family household loomed over the dark hill, that name had turned to a full-fledged scream.
Applejack!
The sobbing filly howled.
Applejack!
She bolted towards the front door like living lightning. It was locked for some reason. She yanked and yanked on the knob, then resulted in slamming her petty little hooves across the frame in desperation.
Open up, please! Sweetie Belle, Scootaloo! They're in trouble! Gotta help them! You just gotta!
This cacophonous pleading continued for a thunderous 2 minutes, until, at last, the heavenly sound of hoofsteps trotted up from the other side, and opened the door with an unlatching sound. Not wasting a single second, Apple Bloom flung open the screen panel and barreled herself into the dark parlor of the house.
What?
Applejack's breathy voice rattled through the shadows.
Apple Bloom, what tarnation's gotten into you? You alright, Sugar Cube?
Apple Bloom paced and paced in tight circles within the center of the room. She paused to hug herself, rocking back and forth as tight, chest-bursting sobs exploded from her throat.
Torn apart. They were tearing them apart. They were everywhere. They took their faces, Applejack.
She whimpered and cried, the tears flowing down her face.
They took their faces. No, hold on a second, Apple Bloom. Just calm down.
Applejack's figure trotted over. She rested a warm, loving hoof on the filly's shoulder, calming her nerves instantly.
Just take a few deep breaths, gather your senses, and try once more to tell me what's going on.
Apple Bloom inhaled, exhaled, and whispered forth, I couldn't move, Applejack. I woke up, and I couldn't move. I tried to warn them, but it was too late. I was so scared. I came directly here. I was hoping you would go and save them. It may not be too late. Applejack leaned forward across the dark room.
Too late for what? The things! The creatures! They took their faces! And now they might even kill them! Now, Sugar Cube, take it easy.
Applejack said, chuckling a little as she waved a soft hoof.
I think you're letting some silly ghost stories get into your head. No, Applejack, I'm not. This is serious.
Apple Bloom stomped her hooves against the house's floorboards.
Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo are at the clubhouse. They're in danger.
Applejack shook her head.
Don't be ridiculous, darling. Ain't no pony left behind at the clubhouse. We're all right here.
Apple Bloom froze. She felt her blood freeze in her veins. We're all? Applejack trotted towards a nearby table and turned the lamp on.
Just take a gander yourself.
The amber light switched on. A body loomed over Apple Bloom's side. She was tilted, the body tilted towards her, until it fully found herself looking directly into the parlor standing mirror. Her jaw dropped, both shades of it, for the left side had a yellow coat, and the right side had an orange one. A pale horn poked out of the mane of lavender, red, and violet, and two threadbare wings stuck out of the calico flank, fitted with 2.5 tails. Apple Bloom spoke, and Scootaloo finished. They're all? A shuddering breath, and Sweetie Belle squeaked,
Now look.
Applejack's voice clicked and clicked.
You got yourself rattled up all over nothing, Sugar Cube.
The quivering filly blinked. A loose flap of yellow peeled off the orange side of her face. A half-second later, a grasshopper leg slid out from underneath, its cobbled length swishing from side to side. It patched the coat back into place and slid back beneath the skin. The little pony gulped as something crunched deep into her throat, spilling warm mush down her esophagus. Applejack trotted into the penumbra of the lamplight. A red fetlock followed by an orange hoof.
And don't we all have that busy day tomorrow?
She smiled, her wrinkled green skin folding underneath the scarlet brow.
We've all got lots and lots of ponies to meet tomorrow morning.
She leaned forward, her mouth opening wider and wider, as her breath rang with the chorus of endless cricket song.
Now give your sister a sweet kiss goodnight. Hello everyone. I'll remind you I do have a Patreon and one-time donation set up. Well, I'm back. Still ridiculously stressed out and everything. So that's why this is late. I was planning on doing it, having it done by this weekend, last weekend, but it didn't happen. So, well, you get it now in the middle of the week, so yay, I guess. And hopefully my scheduling should go back to normal by the end of next week. Hopefully by the time Thanksgiving comes around. Oh, it sucks. If I didn't have my tooth pulled, if I didn't accidentally clip somebody's car, if just a bunch of stuff didn't just happen at once, I would have kept on track for October and everything would have been fine. But everything just in 2 weeks just decided to stack up itself all at once, so. And you already seen that. And as you can tell by my voice, I'm still pretty worn out. In upper news, I have been building a portable sound booth. It's almost done now. I got 2 walls out of it built. It should be done by this weekend. At least the walls, and then it's gonna have to take like 2 days for the glue to firmly have the
have the foam on the walls, and I'm thinking I might videotape at least building one wall, because building those things take a little bit, so yeah, I think I'm just gonna build my third wall, then I'm gonna show you how I built it with my last wall. And then I still need to build the base and the ceiling part, so I think I'll tape that for you guys, and I'll record it and everything. All the materials already bought, except for the carpeting. The problem is, though, for the carpeting, I need to buy myself some pretty dense carpeting to make sure it blocks out a lot of the sound, because you notice what I've been doing is I've been standing in front of my microphone and doing it that way, except right now I'm sitting in front of it because I'm at my apartment, not at my home, because of college, so yeah, it's just stressing, but this weekend should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, I'm talking a bit quieter than normal. That's why the gain's up, and you can tell because my voice keeps cracking. And that's because these walls are really thin. That's why I can't record here, really. Other than that, I'm back. And Australia is going to continue, and yes, I am going to be finding a new story, but that's not going to happen. Australia and the new story is not going to happen until the week after. So, not this week, not next week, but the week after that, pretty much during Thanksgiving. And that's because I am going to be, come hell or high water, I am going to be putting my October stuff despite how late it is, because I took a month finding it, and I've already got them recorded too, so might as well just finish editing them and put them up, so yeah, with that I'll leave you, and have a good night.